This episode is made possible by NetSuite by Oracle and Brex, the AI-powered spend platform.
Hello, it's Peter Benavides, CFO of Olo, and you are listening to the CFO Thought Leader Podcast.
This is episode 964.
We're finding ways to get people to work in their own environments using our tool without having to leave their own environments, which I think is really important. Like I'm not a product expert, but I spend enough time in product to really have an appreciation for, one, how product is built. It's not like you give the plans to somebody to build a shed and then the sheds are, constructed in a couple of weeks. It takes time, it takes research, it takes testing, and it can also be expensive. From a product standpoint, it's not just about thinking about the next great thing. It's about talking to your customers and understanding how are they using the tool and how can they use it better. We spent a tremendous amount of time investing in automation because we were growing so fast. And in order to keep up, you can either have automation and technology help you, or you can keep hiring more people. And from a burn perspective, from an expense perspective, I thought it made much more sense to have processes that can sustain, the long run, right? And not just keep hiring people to do things.
Hi, it's Jack. On today's show, we speak with CFO Luigi Testa, CFO of LinkSquares. 4 years ago, when Luigi Testa first joined LinkSquares as CFO, the Boston-based tech firm employed roughly 40 people. Today, with nearly 400 employees, the company is less concerned with growth and more about achieving a balance between growth and efficiency. To achieve this, LinkSquares management has made automation and AI adoption a priority. CFO Luigi Testa talks about the delicate balance between growth and efficiency and much, much more on today's episode. We'll begin after this. 37,025-1. These are the three numbers to remember to get the visibility and control you need to make the right business decisions instantly. 37,000. That's the number of businesses which have upgraded to NetSuite by Oracle. NetSuite is the #1 cloud financial system, streamlining accounting, financial management, inventory, HR, and more. 25. NetSuite turns 25 this year. That's 25 years of helping businesses do more with less, close their books in days, not weeks, and drive down expenses. 1. Because your business is one of a kind, you should get a customized solution for all of your KPIs in one efficient system and with one source of truth. Manage risk, get reliable forecasts, and improve margins. Everything you need, all in one place. Right now, download NetSuite's popular KPI checklist designed to give you consistently excellent performance, absolutely free, at netsuite.com/KPI. That's netsuite.com/KPI. Hello, we're speaking with Luigi Testa, CFO of LinkSquares. Luigi, welcome.
Thank you, Jack. Great to be here today.
So, Luigi, we're going to begin where we always do, which is to ask you to look back, try to identify some of the experiences you feel prepared you to become a finance leader. What would those be?
I think the most important one is not really an experience, but it's you can be the smartest person in the world, but if you don't have a great network, you're not going to go very far. It's just kind of useless. So I spent a lot of time in investing in building a network over the years, and that's really helped me as I go through the CFO journey, and I'm discovering and learning and facing new challenges to get through those challenges. It's not necessarily somebody that always has an answer for what I'm looking for, but if you think about the journey of any career, especially the CFO, you're going to run into issues and problems that you've never seen before, and you always need to expect the unexpected. So having a really strong network that you can rely on is really key. And it's not about waking up one day and deciding you want to have a great network and it's just there tomorrow. It's about building it over the course of your career. It's sort of like saving for retirement. You can't wake up one day and say, hey, I'm going to be a millionaire when I retire. You got to save over the course of your working career to have to put funds in investments so you can grow that. And you get like kind of a flywheel effect once you get your network going, and it's really really powerful and can help you get through really any situations that you come across. So that for me has been really helpful in getting my finance career where it is. I think the second thing is also studying people that you've worked with in the past, CFOs, CEOs, different, doesn't necessarily need to be the executive level person, but just studying those people that you work with very closely. It's really easy to read a book about famous executives like Bill Gates and Elon Musk, and I mean, you're going to see what they want you to see or what the news wants you to see. But when you see somebody every day, you're seeing them through their great times, through their terrible times, through the times where they're indecisive, decisive, and you're seeing how they react and how they handle certain situations. And part of it also is seeing what not to do in certain situations. So I think for me, kind of looking back when I started as CFO at LinkSquares, I spent some time really thinking about my journey over the course of my finance career and folks that I worked with and what made those folks successful and also what made some of those folks not successful. So that's probably number two for me. And I think the last one is really important. Not living in a spreadsheet all the time. It's people that are in finance tend to do that, and you can get stuck, living in a world that is not reality, which is a spreadsheet. And you need to take a walk in the shoes of your peers and other folks in your company. Understand how their parts of the business run. That'll make you a lot more successful because you can do anything in a spreadsheet, but one thing that you can't do is put yourself in other people's shoes and sit in the corner and build a financial model. There's a human side to it.
Well, I like the way you summed up the three. Living in a spreadsheet, that's a great expression because I think many finance people do for many years until they discover they have to collaborate at such a level in some of these organizations that they have to sort of spend a little more time face to face with folks. You mentioned networking, right? Were you always a good networker? Was it a skill you acquired along the way? If you think back to your college years, I mean, there goes Luigi. He knows everybody. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good question. I enjoy spending time with people. I enjoy learning from other people. It's certainly like reading a book is great, but having a firsthand account and just picking people's brain and understanding how they got to where they did and why they did it, and always asking why. That's been a really big part of how I've built my network, and it's also helping people, in different situations, and expecting that if you do the right thing, people will do the right thing for you along the way. And I think, partnering with folks in all areas of the business, real estate, legal, wherever it might be, and building relationships. I've actually never applied for a job online. I've always gotten a job through somebody that I know my network, including LinkSquares. So I think it just goes a really long way, and it's a muscle that you build over time, and you got to not necessarily do it every day, but you got to maintain it, and you got to water it, and you got to let it get sunshine, and it'll pay it pays back in dividends, I think. So it's not for everybody. I think a lot of people can also be reserved and not want to do it, but it really makes you a smarter, more well-rounded person. Building a network, and you can learn a thing or two along the way too.
You did not come up the accounting track. You were really a financial analyst and got into corporate development. Is that too abbreviated for you, or how would you?
No, that's good. You hit the nail on the head. So yeah, I worked in venture for a couple of years out of college, and then I've been working with technology companies, either private equity backed or venture backed, since then. So my last role, it was a private equity backed company called Building Engines. I built and ran the M&A kind of corp dev function there. And that was that was a really great experience. I've been in companies also, a company called Rapid7 that's based in Boston. They're publicly traded. So I've had a pretty wide range of experiences from kind of early stage VC to really growth stage companies as well.
And it's always been the geography is Boston. And I think this plays back to the network. I know there's a strong sort of networking. It's a strong networking city for finance, as far as I can tell, and the venture community, clearly.
Yeah, I went to school in Boston. I went to Boston College High School, and then I went to Bentley, and then I went to Babson for my MBA. So I've certainly, stayed in the Northeast my entire career. And yeah, I think Boston's a really small town, and as you get older, you sort of start to just like see everybody and know everybody. And yeah, it's been helpful being in this area, but I think really being engaged with different folks that are either investors or bankers or real estate people, legal folks, finding the people that you like, that you get along with, that you can have a beer with, that you can feel like you want to grab coffee with on a random day. That's been really helpful, and it just multiplies as you go through your career.
You mentioned you got your MBA at Babson, is that right? And
Yep.
when did you decide to go back for that? Was that right after undergrad, or did you wait a few years?
I waited. I wanted to work for a handful of years, and then I got married, and we were thinking about having kids. So I said, I definitely want to go back to business school before I have kids, because once I have kids, all bets are off. It's going to be a lot harder. So I did it before I turned 30, and it was a fantastic experience.
That's an entrepreneurial program, or is it? That's when I think of Babson, I always think it's more geared towards entrepreneurs. But what would you tell us?
Yeah, it certainly is. I think it's geared. They're known for being an entrepreneurial school. But as far as the education you get, that you can specialize in marketing, you can specialize just in general management for an MBA. I did a combination of just general management and entrepreneurial studies as well. So I kind of split the two of them, and the curriculum is pretty broad, but they do have folks there. A lot of the professors are either investors themselves in private equity and venture, or folks that have started companies and sold them, and they're just teaching for fun because they want something to do that's intellectually engaging. So that for me was something that like really drew me to go to Babson.
So, Luigi, I was curious before when you said studying people. I was like, what is he getting at there? And I think so often in the workplace, we observe our colleagues very closely. How do they manage their time? Do they manage their time more efficiently than I do? And we look up and we try to decipher the leaders and how they behave in certain situations. Is that what you were getting at, or what would you tell us?
Great question. So let me give you a tale of two different CFOs that I've worked with in the past, and one that I think was very successful and did a fantastic job, and another one that I think they're kind of tapped out at a certain point. And you'll see why in a second here. So the first, I talk about living outside the spreadsheet. The first CFO that I'm thinking of, he grew up in the public accounting world. Came into the business as a controller and kind of graduated to being a CFO. Really, really common for a lot of companies. One thing that significantly limited his ability to scale and to grow and to think strategically was, two things. One was living in the spreadsheet all the time. Everything was always about the numbers, which you're a CFO, you're a finance person. Like that obviously is what you need to know and care about. But because of that, he sort of became paralyzed, but analysis paralysis just kind of set in with how he thought about the world, and wasn't able to scale, himself. Being at a business that is growing 50, 80, 100% a year, you have to scale yourself with the company every year as the business grows, or the business will outgrow you, and you'll be looking for another job at some point. So living in the spreadsheet too long, just caring about the numbers and not the human side of things, that was a big problem, and ultimately kind of caught up with them. And it's just, you just don't know these things, right? So that's why I say, like, studying other leaders that you've worked with in the past is really important. And you can't study somebody for 10 minutes. It's like learning a language. Like, you got to study them every day and then reflect, okay, what did I learn? The second CFO, very successful. How is he different? He also grew up in the public accounting world. And I wanted to use two people from the public accounting world because I think you can automatically say, okay, accountants are all the same. Well, no, they're not. They're not all the same. So this particular CFO, I worked with at my last company, Building Engines, and he was a great person to learn from. He knew the numbers well, and he knew what was going on in the finance world, but he didn't spend every single second of his time in the spreadsheets. He spent time understanding what was going on in the business, and the most important thing that I took away from that was his ability to be able to boil things down and explain them to other counterparts in the business. If there was an issue, he could very, very easily explain it, and not necessarily relate it back to the numbers, but relate it back to why it was such a problem. And at the end of the day, the numbers are really important, but it's about like what is fundamentally happening in the business and what needs to change to make the business successful. And he was really good at understanding what was happening and rallying people and explaining to them how we would be able to change it.
Great insight for us there. Thank you, Luigi. Also wondering, as someone who over time has been involved in, as a finance analyst as well as corporate development, let me just confirm first. M&A was part of your world, or
yes?
Yeah. Can you tell us something about your experiences in M&A? I mean, when a deal, when a particular acquisition just didn't happen, what most often was the reason? I mean, there might have been deals that initially looked fabulous, and then you went a little further. And how am I doing? Was that part of your world for a while? Or
absolutely. For a handful of years, it was part of my world. And I'm doing something similar, a webinar tomorrow on M&A. So the timing is great.
We'll tap into that then. What would you tell us?
Yeah. So why did deals not happen or go through? There's really two reasons why. And the first one is as you think about it, it's kind of like a no-brainer. When you're looking at acquisitions, you need to do it with purpose. So when I first started in M&A, it's kind of like going to a grocery store, like really hungry and without a list and not knowing what you're going to cook for the next week or two. It's overload. There's just so much out there, right? Everything looks good, right? So having a strategy, having a playbook, having a need. Am I buying something because I want to just acquire more revenue? I want to buy more pizza shops and I'm a pizza shop. Or am I buying something because I want diversity in product? I'm a pizza shop, but I want to buy a sushi restaurant or a Mexican restaurant. So unless you know that, it's really hard to be focused in acquisition. So you could get down the road with a company and realize, I don't even know why we're buying this. So being able to answer the why I'm buying this and being able to kind of segment, different areas that you want to focus acquisitions in, that's really important. So at Building Engines, that was a commercial real estate technology company. So anytime you walk into a building, probably most of the buildings you'll go into in a major city have Building Engines, and they got acquired a couple of years ago, but they have Building Engines as their software. There's other things you can do besides security and work orders. So we were actually looking for like great products to bring into the platform, not just more revenue. The second reasons acquisitions fail are you don't have you can buy the business, but you don't have a good plan to integrate it. So you'll go through the diligence, you'll kind of kick the tires and everything, and either the story that the bankers or the CEO or the founders told you about the business when you were in diligence, it sounded great and looked sexy, but as you dig into it, it's not exactly what you thought it was going to be, so it wasn't represented the best way. Or you're looking at an integration plan and you're playing it forward a couple of years and you're envisioning this being a part of your company, and the pieces just don't fit together. So those are like the ways that, in my experience, acquisitions have failed, and the best time to have them fail is early on before you invest too much time, whether it's money, with legal counsel, or just the executive team or the entire company's time of how are we going to make this how are we going to make this marriage work?
Just to understand, as a financial analyst, uh, just looking at the different professionals, finance professionals who might be involved in M&A or might be involved in helping uh, complete an acquisition, you would reach out when the time was right. I need a professional to accompany me to this corporate. We're going to take a look at their books today and make certain they're everything we think they are over the next couple of days. Or you're not the accountant, am I right? You're sort of the strategy minded M&A executive, and you are reliant on the accountants to help verify and confirm. How would you put it?
I'm not a CPA. I didn't work in public accounting. I know enough about accounting to make sure things are understand things are in good order. But if you're going to get super technical, which you do want to do during an acquisition, yeah, you want to tap the shoulder of the folks that are within your org, or you bring in a third party that's all they do is they just do diligence on acquisitions and make sure that all the check boxes are in the right spot. So you have an idea of exactly what you want to see and exactly the way things should be. And it's pretty standard for most companies in general. So once you have a deal sort of in the diligence phase, you would tap those professionals. And a lot of times you want to go outside, you would go outside your company and have somebody do a QOV, a quality of earnings. And that's really the way you can check into all the areas of the business from a financial point of view. Did you pay taxes? Did you file in all the right states? Are your contracts actually real contracts that you can recognize revenue on? There's 100 different things that go into it, and generally, depending on the size of the acquisition, almost always you want to bring a third party in that will come in with you and validate all those things.
Now, I just want to circle back with you on your networking experience, as you said. I mean, what you're sharing with us really reveals how important networking is to a corporate development executive. Rather than take the in-house accounting folks out, you would bring in maybe a third-party firm or someone help to look at those books, and you're reaching out to your network as well as the finance leaders network, I suppose. I'm trying to understand who you were. I think you were probably reporting directly to a CFO very often. You were coming up with potential targets for acquisitions and doing some, due diligence to understand better. Was it a strategic fit? Would it not be? Would it be? Have a discussion with the CFO, get a thumbs up, or leave with a bunch of questions you needed to get answered. How am I doing?
Doing great. Yeah, I would say a couple of corrections. So generally, yes, I worked for the CFO before I was a CFO. In my last role, we got really targeted toward product acquisition. So I ended up working for the chief product officer. So I learned a ton about product in my last couple of years of building engines because I was working for the chief product officer, and that gave me like another. I talk about living outside the spreadsheet. That gave me like a much more of an appreciation for living outside the spreadsheet. Um, as far as the deals and everything, I would spend time working with our customers, with our board, our investors, and also with our sales team and products team to understand where are all the gaps, and then together we would come up with areas or kind of sectors within commercial real estate, or it doesn't matter whatever the industry you're looking at. We come up with kind of adjacent or subsectors that we're really interested in, and we're like, do we want to go and build this thing? Do we want to try to buy it? Maybe we want to partner with somebody because we don't want to go out and buy it. It doesn't make enough sense to go and buy it. So then I would take we prioritize those areas, and I would take those areas and I would spend 90 to 120 days finding every single company under the sun that has something to do. Like one of them was visitor access, so like security. You go into a building, you get a badge, or they give you like a little sticky with your name on it. Like, how does that work? It's actually pretty complicated. But I spent 120 days looking at every company under the sun that could be a potentially a good fit. And then we come up with recommendations, and you start talking to businesses that could be a good fit, and you get down the road with some of them, and ultimately you decide to buy it. You decide you want to partner, or you decide, no, that's not for me. I'm going to go to the next category.
Well, some great insights there for us. Thank you, Luigi. If we have some additional questions for you regarding the career, we might ask them a little later during the mentoring round. But right now, Let's find out about this company, LinkSquares. Tell us about it. What is it up to? What are its offerings today?
Sure. So our mission is to be the best legal tech company on the planet, and so we serve the legal function of every company. It doesn't matter what industry that you're in. And if you take a step back and you think about G&A, where legal sits, G&A is probably the most underfunded part of every business. Every business that I've worked at, G&A has been the most underfunded. It's a cost center. It's not a revenue generating center like sales or marketing. So because of that, the folks that are in legal that live in G&A are at a disadvantage against their peers that are in sales and marketing. Sales and marketing, a lot of investment goes to that part of the business because it's revenue generating. So they have tons of tools and widgets and things that they use to make themselves go faster, to make them efficient. Legal doesn't have that. Legal doesn't have that today. And that's why LinkSquares exists. We are helping legal counsel, legal operations, anybody that works in a legal function, make their part of the business go faster and make their job more efficient. So it actually takes them from being, very tactical in the weeds, putting out fires all day, allow them to be really strategic with a tool like ours. So it's one platform. It's a dedicated tool that legal teams use to do really simple things. So Jack, if I asked you, if you had 20,000 contracts and you wanted to know how many of your contracts were companies in Ohio who, had force majeure languages and their contract expired in December of 2023, how would you know that? You have to read every contract, right? So our tool does that in seconds. So, and it's pretty low level work. I mean, in some cases, just Control F and finding key terms. So, at its core, like those are the kinds of things that LinkSquares does for customers, and we use it too. It's been phenomenally helpful even in the finance function. So we have contract assembly. So you want to create a contract. How do you do it? We have contract signature. And then the last thing, which I described, was understanding what's in your already executed contracts. And we also have project management for legal teams. Legal teams get tons of requests all day long. How do you manage them? How do you prioritize them? Who knows what's working? Who knows who's working on what? That's really key and important. And that's why we exist. We exist to make legal teams go faster, to eliminate bottlenecks. And the thing that I'll end with is you think about a legal team, right, or a legal function within a company. Every major decision at some point has to go through legal, and the goal of LinkSquares is to make that process go faster and be more efficient.
I think this question always helps us better understand where this company's at, and that question is, if you wouldn't mind, provide us with sort of an abbreviated history of its capital structure.
Sure. I mean, we raised $161 million in Q1 of 2022. We raised $100 million. That was our Series C round. And then the summer before that of 2021, we raised our Series B, about 40 million. And then when I started, we raised our Series A, $14 million, January of 2020. And then we shut the business down because COVID happened. So nobody went back to work for a while. That's the abbreviated history of the capital structure.
Well, I want to understand, and again, when I look at the site and what have you, AI is a big piece of the story or a big piece of this company's future. I don't think you're going to disagree with that. Everyone's understanding now has gotten a little, we've got a greater depth as far as AI is concerned. I would think most of us anyway, in the last 12 months in particular. As you try to tell this company's story, I would believe that it's become more compelling. Just when we think of the legal community and all those contracts and templates and all of that, how AI could play a role here. How am I doing? Am I oversimplifying, or how would you put it better for me?
No, it's all AI the way that I look at it.
Did you, when you first joined the company, though, was this, I have to believe you've been able to tell the story in a much more compelling manner now that investors, analysts are getting more savvy in terms of the possibilities around AI.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. We were nerds, right? LinkSquares, we were AI nerds before it was cool to be nerds, and now everybody wants to be an AI nerd. So, we started at it a long time ago, in 2016. Before I knew the two founders back then. I wasn't, working for the company then. I thought the idea was like a really strong one, and I love the idea of something that makes the business more efficient. You can automate processes. You can eliminate bottlenecks, and you're not just doing low level work. You're able to be strategic. So that's yeah, I believe in it. From the very outset, and certainly obviously raising all these rounds of financing over the last handful of years has certainly validated that there's a market for it and that investors want it. Legal tech is actually is a pretty hot investment area for a lot of investors right now.
When you think of growth, is it both organic and inorganic M&A?
Yeah, I mean, Jack, the business has been growing tremendously. Over the last 3 or 4 years, we've been growing over 100% every year. So, and that's 100% organic. We haven't looked at any acquisitions or pulled the trigger on any acquisitions yet. I think at some point, if something's compelling, we'll focus there. As we get larger, you kind of naturally kind of find things that are adjacent that make a lot of sense. But right now, we're really focused on growing organically. And if something great comes along that's an opportunity for us, we will absolutely take a look at it.
So when we talk about the metrics that you're looking at closely, are these customer renewals? What numbers are keeping you up at night, or what do you look at before your first cup of coffee? Not to be so negative as the.
Well, there's a handful of things, right? In this sort of world we're living in now, a lot of CFOs have been asked to do more with less. So how can I do more with less? Well, okay, well, I either bring it in the top or I cut it out of the bottom, or that's one thing that I'm focused on and looking at is managing and improving on a continual basis the efficiency of the company, and really, really heavily focused on the go-to-market function. I think as you look at businesses at our stage, the ones that have been very successful are the ones that have mastered the go-to-market function. And when I mean my masters, I mean being able to sell and being able to do that really efficiently and becoming a leader in the space. So I'm looking at everything from how long does it take to close a sale, our average sale price, what's our CAC paybacks, basically how long does it take you to recoup the cost of acquiring a customer in terms of time. And then generally, what are our opportunities for expansion? And the last one, which is really important, especially as you get larger, because you develop a larger customer base. What keeps our customers happy, and how do what's everything that we can do to make sure that our customers stay happy and continue to renew with us? Those are things that I focus on and look at on a very regular basis.
I think you mentioned that the company has found in-house ways of using its technology. And this is really an offering for the legal community. But is it just legal, or are you looking at other areas?
No, not at all. A couple of things. One is, the offerings you can LinkSquares can shine in a fundraise. We actually did our Series C fundraise in under 70 days, which is like very, 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 very quick. But also like on an everyday basis. So our accounting team and finance team uses LinkSquares to handle all of our procurement. And that's one thing that we're seeing now. A lot of our customers are wanting to do that as well. And because budgets are tight across a lot of companies, we're getting the CFO involved in the conversation a lot earlier, because ultimately the budget for any kind of software needs to be justified to the CFO. And those are things that we're throwing out there. Like, well, it's not just a legal tool. It can be used for things like finance and procurement across the entire company. So, it's certainly a platform that helps, efficiency, not just in legal, but, across other parts of the business. So, why wouldn't you want to buy something that's going to help the entire business?
You mentioned how one of your chapters, you work closely with the product team. Is that experience coming in handy here as you discover this might be a multi-product offering or, multi-sector offering?
No, absolutely, Jack. It's already a multi-product offering, and the sales teams use it to draft contracts. So like we have a Salesforce integration, so that's awesome and great. The sales teams don't need to leave the comfort of Salesforce, which they love. Just like the legal teams, they can work within Word. We have a Word add-in, so um, we're finding ways to get people to work in their own environments using our tool without having to leave their own environments, which I think is really important. And yeah, my product background, like I'm not a product expert, but I spend enough time in product to really have an appreciation for, one, how products built. It's not like you give the plans to somebody to build a shed and then the sheds are, constructed in a couple of weeks. It takes time, it takes research, it takes testing, and it can also be expensive. Um, and two, from a product standpoint, it's not just about thinking about the next great thing. It's about talking to your customers and understanding how are they using the tool and how can they use it better, right? Like I would have never thought I would have needed an iPad when it first came out. I thought it was kind of like a gimmicky thing, and I use mine every day. So things like that, like a lot of coordination, communication across different people that are either involved in building the product or people that are actually using it every day.
We speak to finance leaders very often about their data strategies and where they are. Some will tell us, they just arrived and they're cleaning up the data still. We have to get a few pieces into place here. Where are you along the data? The dream data is over here and the laggards are back here. Where are you on the continuum there? Yeah.
Um, I think we are, I would give us a 10 out of 10. I mean, there's always things that you want. I have 1,000 questions about the business that I always want to get answered, and it's just taking time to sit down and think through those. Um, when I came in, we were only a couple million of revenue, so I had the luxury of being able to kind of build things from scratch, build the team from scratch, build the tech stack from scratch, figure out what are the important pieces of data that we want to monitor, develop dashboards. There was no cleanup phase because the company was so young and new. Right now we're just under 400 people. When I started, we were about 40. So um, luckily, I got to with the team, kind of construct everything from the ground up. And things change, right? You build something and then you look at it a year later and say, this, I want to knock this down and rebuild it. What we spent a lot of time though within the finance team and across the entire company, but particularly the finance team, was investing in automation. And you talk about AI, like I think about AI and then I'll think about automation. We spent a tremendous amount of time investing in automation because we were growing so fast. And in order to keep up, you can either have automation and technology help you, or you can keep hiring more people. And from a burn perspective, from an expense perspective, I thought it made much more sense to have processes that can sustain, the long run, right? And not just keep hiring people to do things.
And just in regards to AI, you said automation and AI, you separated them, and I was wondering, could you explore a little more with us the role you believe AI could have in your finance function that maybe it doesn't currently have, or the things that you think you might be capable of doing someday that thanks to AI, or
I don't think they're separate. I think they go hand in hand. I think sometimes AI can create opportunities for automation, and I think sometimes you can create automation without AI. So I think of them very much the same. I think that um, in the long run, you think about what are all the really simplistic tasks that you're doing over and over again. You're on the factory floor of finance, right? You're billing customers, you're collecting payments, you're doing payroll. What are things that I can automate or I can use AI to do in LinkSquares as finance part of the business that are just something that can be automated that doesn't need a human. And I think in a lot of cases you can use AI, you can automate probably 75% of them, but there's always going to be a need for human touch and humans to look over it with a second set of eyes. But going into a spreadsheet and pulling out keywords and numbers and things like that, you can do that with AI and automation, and then you can review it after and make sure the analysis makes sense.
Okay, well, we're going to jump to our finance strategic moment question. This is where we just ask for one moment of strategic insight that you've had during your long career. It might have happened last week. It might have happened 10 years ago. Don't know. What comes to mind when we ask for a finance strategic moment?
So I have a really good light bulb moment that I had when I was at Building Engines doing M&A, and it kind of goes along the lines of living outside the spreadsheet and the numbers. And so I spent a ton of time with our investors at Building Engines. They helped us build our M&A strategy, and a lot of times when we would find a company that we liked, we would go in together, have a conversation together with them, and kind of pitch, what could this marriage look like. So after one of these conversations that we had, I went out for coffee at the Milk Street Cafe in Boston, with one of our investors. And this guy is like incredibly sharp. He used to be a partner at Bain Capital, and we were kind of doing a debrief on it. And he said, "You know what, Luigi, you're so sharp with the numbers, like everything numbers related, like it so well. But one thing you just need to figure out and work on is telling the story. Like, how do you tell that story? How do you tell a compelling story? Like, how do you see the vision?" And that was the light bulb moment. I was like, "You're 100% right. I'm thinking in the numbers. I'm just talking about the numbers, but it's almost like flat. So how do I bring life to it?" And the way that, after that, the way that I thought about it now is the way that I think about it now is there's a story that you're telling, the vision, what's going to happen, the future, whatever it is, and the data that supports it, is the numbers. So it really becomes about the story and not about the numbers. The numbers are like very, very crucially important to have the story make sense. But the most important thing is being able to tell that story and being able to communicate what that vision is, not the precise numbers of X, Y, and Z. So that was my light bulb moment. It was spending time with him and just getting a really strong appreciation for living outside the spreadsheet and understanding that it's not just about the numbers. The numbers are really important, and the numbers are how companies get valued. But at the end of the day, you want to be able to communicate what your company does, why it's successful, how it's going to be successful, and you can't just do that with showing numbers.
CFOs and controllers, does expense management feel like a necessary evil? It's time to switch to Brex. Brex automates and accelerates spend management with easy-to-use corporate cards, travel, expense management, and bill pay, all on one AI-powered platform. Brex makes it easy to boost efficiency and compliance enterprise-wide and free up your managers, employees, and accounting team for higher impact work. Top companies from startups to enterprises are using Brex to automate manual work and transform their finance operations. We're talking DoorDash, Robinhood, Airtable, and countless other industry leaders. Ready to join them? Switch to AI-powered spend management at Brex.com. We're going to jump to what we refer to as our mentoring round, where we'll ask you several quick questions intended to inform and inspire future finance leaders. We want you to think back about your first 30 days in this role as CFO. What would you go back in time and tell yourself? This is something you didn't know at the time, something unexpected perhaps that you're like, I wish I knew that when I stepped into this role. Not about the company, it's just really about the role itself. What comes to mind?
I came in at a really interesting time because a month or so after I started, COVID happened, March of 2020, and and we shut the office down. So I think that was certainly like an extreme. But coming into any role, especially a CFO role, I think you need to expect the unexpected and really embrace it and appreciate it, because it's a huge part of the journey, and it's what makes you successful. Like, how you deal with when the unexpected happens. Like, how do you behave? How do you function? Are you freaking out? Are you calm and just able to think clearly and figure the problem out? Nobody really ever told me anything along those lines, like, oh, something's going to blow up and you're going to have to figure out how to fix it. And it really is just part of like the day to day of the journey. And it certainly makes for good stories in the long run. But expecting unexpected, that's certainly something that I think every finance person or every person that's going into a CFO role needs to be able to grasp, because a lot of finance folks, by their nature, they're big planners, right? So when a plan doesn't go according to the way that you want it to, it can be really frustrating, and you need to figure out what are the alternatives to getting that plan to continue to move along in the direction that's healthy for the business, but not necessarily the original kind of goal or area that you set out to have it be.
Thank you for that. We always like to ask our guests to reflect a little on the personal side for us. In general, what's something most people don't know about you?
Let's see. One interesting fact about me is I was on Say Yes to the Dress many years ago before I got married. The season finale of Say Yes to the Dress.
What's it called?
Say Yes to the Dress. It's a wedding show on Bravo.
Well, congratulations on that. And that was just dumb luck, yes?
Dumb luck, yeah. It was dumb luck. It was.
Well, we might have a follow-up question for you on that, but we also like to ask if you have a book selection.
Well, I have 3 little girls, so I read lots of short stories. So I don't think any of those books are going to be helpful for your CFO leaders. But I think you think about areas that you want to get better at. Like I'm always asking, why is this, right? How do I do this? And for me, those are areas that I would generally go read to.
Well, believe it or not, Luigi, we're up to our final question, which is to have you look forward for us the next 12 months and share with us what your priorities are as a CFO. What would those be?
Yeah, finance leader priorities. I'm thinking about 2023, and then how do things change in 2024? And I think 2024 is going to be more of the same as far as the economy and just generally what the business environment is. So there's not a CFO in the world that's out there today that hasn't been asked to do more with less, or reduce the burn, reduce the cost structure of the business. And we're gonna be in the same position for the next call it 12 months here. So my priorities are really going to be about continuing to grow the business in a healthy way, but also drive towards improving efficiency across the board on an ongoing basis. How do I get more efficient? How does my go-to-market function, sell quicker? How do they sell, for less dollars? That's really the big priority. We want to continue to grow the business. We've been very successful and fortunate to bring it as far as we have, and we look forward to a very bright future. But now we're in the year of becoming a true durable growth business, which efficiency is really the key part of that recipe, but also growing at a healthy rate is the other piece of it. Doesn't need to be 3 times. It needs to be 30, 40, 50, 60% a year. So that's what we're focused on is durable growth in developing that part as our business.
Luigi Testa, thank you for joining us on CFO Thought Leader.
Thank you, Jack. It's been a pleasure.
Hello, Thought Leader listeners. We hope 2024 is treating you well. If you haven't already, we hope you'll pay a visit to CFOThoughtLeader.com and go ahead and subscribe to our Mentoring Round newsletter, where we highlight the career lessons and moments of strategic insight shared by our recent CFO guests. Also, LinkedIn users, please go ahead and follow our CFO Thought Leader company page, and you'll be certain not to miss a single Thought Leader video debut. CFO Thought Leader, the #1 thought leadership platform exclusively for and by CFOs. As always, thank you for listening.